Captain Alex Harding stood by the observation deck, his sharp gaze fixed on the infinite expanse of stars. The hum of the Colonies systems buzzed softly in the background, a constant reminder of the fragile technology shielding them from the void. Despite the calm, a nagging unease gnawed at him. Decades of military service had honed his instincts, and tonight, something felt off. The calm panel behind him chirped, breaking the stillness. "Captain Harding, are you there?" came the voice of Liam Cook, a young technician stationed at the relay hub. There was a tremor in his tone that set Harding's teeth on edge. "I'm here, Cook. What's the issue?" Harding turned, his tall frame illuminated by the dim, sterile light of the control room. I think you need to see this, sir," Cook stammered. "We've picked up a signal, encrypted, but it's definitely not ours." Harding's jaw tightened. He strode to the panel, his boots clicking against the metallic floor. "Patch it through." The display flickered to life, showing a fragmented stream of data. As Harding scrutinized it, his unease deepened. The signal wasn't just foreign. It was a beacon, a coded message meant for something or someone unknown. Before he could respond, the Colony's alarm system blared, the piercing sound echoing through the halls. "Status report," Harding barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. Unidentified ships entering the atmosphere. Cook's voice crackled over the intercom. "They're jamming our long-range comms." Harding's chest tightened as he activated the Colony's defense protocols. Screens around the room lit up, displaying grainy footage of sleek, angular vessels descending like predators upon prey. The alien ships unleashed a volley of energy blasts, tearing through the Colony's defensive shields with ruthless efficiency. "Evacuate the civilians to the shelters," Harding ordered, his mind racing. He knew their defenses wouldn't hold against an assault of this magnitude. Grabbing his sidearm, he sprinted to the command center, where a skeleton crew scrambled to respond to the escalating crisis. The ground beneath the Colony trembled as explosions erupted across the settlement. Fire spread, casting an orange glow against the night sky. Harding burst into the command center, where his officers looked to him for guidance amidst the chaos. "Focus fire on the lead vessel," he commanded. "If we can disable it, we might disrupt their formation." The crew moved with urgency, but their efforts seemed futile. The alien ships darted through the air with impossible speed, their weapons precise and devastating. Harding clenched his fists as he watched one of their last functioning turrets explode in a shower of sparks. Meanwhile, Cook huddled in the relay hub, his fingers flying across the console. His heart pounded in his chest as he struggled to bypass the jamming signal. Sweat dripped down his brow as he muttered to himself, come on, just a little more." The door behind him slid open, and Harding stepped in, his face grim. "Cook, we need to get a distress signal out. If Earth doesn't hear about this, we're done." "I'm trying, sir," Cook replied, his voice shaky but determined. "The encryption on their signal, it's like nothing I've ever seen. But I think I can piggyback on their own transmission. It's risky, but it might work." "Do it," Harding said without hesitation. "We don't have time to play it safe." As Cook worked, the lights flickered, and the building shook from another impact. Outside, alien ground troops began deploying, their towering, insectoid forms cutting through the chaos with terrifying precision. Harding watched on a nearby monitor as civilians were herded into shelters, some falling victim to the relentless invaders. The encrypted transmission suddenly cleared on Cook's console, and his eyes widened. "Sir, you need to see this." Harding leaned over, scanning the decrypted data. The aliens weren't just attacking New Haven. They had a detailed plan targeting key human colonies across the sector. This wasn't a raid. It was a coordinated campaign to cripple humanity's foothold in space. "Save that data and send the distress signal," Harding ordered. "We need reinforcements now." As Cook transmitted the message, a chilling noise echoed through the hub. The two men froze as the sound of claws scraping against metal grew louder. Cook's eyes darted to the door, where shadows loomed beyond the frosted glass. "Arm yourself," Harding said quietly, drawing his weapon. He positioned himself between Cook and the door, his grip steady despite the adrenaline surging through him. The door burst open, and an alien soldier charged in, its segmented limbs moving with unnatural speed. Harding fired, his shots finding their mark in the creature's armored torso. The alien collapsed with a guttural shriek, but more followed, their inhuman eyes glowing in the dim light. Cook grabbed a rifle from a nearby rack, his hands trembling as he aimed. I've got your back, sir." The ensuing firefight was brutal and chaotic. Harding moved with calculated precision, his every shot lethal. Cook, though inexperienced, held his ground, his desperation fueling his aim. The aliens fought fiercely, their advanced weaponry overwhelming. But the two men refused to relent. After what felt like an eternity, the final alien fell, its body crumpling to the floor. Harding surveyed the room, his breathing heavy. "Are you injured?" Cook shook his head, his face pale but raw. "No, sir. Just shaken." Harding nodded. "Good. We're not out of this yet. Let's move." They exited the hub, stepping into the chaos outside. The colony was a battlefield, with flames consuming what had once been a thriving settlement. In the distance, Harding spotted a group of civilians trapped under debris as an alien patrol closed in. "Stay low and cover me," Harding instructed. Without waiting for a reply, he sprinted toward the civilians, his weapon blazing. Cook followed, providing suppressing fire as Harding pulled the survivors to safety. By the time they reached the nearest shelter, Harding's comm unit crackled to life. "Captain Harding, this is Earth Command. We received your signal. Reinforcements are en route, but it'll take time." Harding's jaw tightened. Time was a luxury they didn't have. As the alien ships began to retreat, their mission seemingly complete, Harding knew this was far from over. He turned to Cook, who stood beside him, battered but unbroken. "We've got their plans. They won't catch us off guard again." Cook met his gaze, a spark of determination in his eyes. "What now, sirs?" Harding's voice was steady, his resolve unwavering. "We fight back, and this time we make them pay." The room buzzed with controlled chaos as the United Defense Council convened in Earth's orbital headquarters, a gleaming station that hung like a sentinel above the planet. General Ethan Marshall stood at the head of the circular chamber, his piercing gray eyes scanning the faces of the gathered leaders. Holographic projections of devastated colonies floated in the air, a grim reminder of the alien attack that had sent shockwaves through humanity's collective psyche. Marshall's voice cut through the noise. "Enough. We don't have time for debate. The aliens have declared war, and if we don't act now, they'll sweep through the colonies unchecked." His words hung heavy in the air. The council members, a mix of politicians, military officers, and scientists, exchanged uneasy glances. One of them, a wiry man with a sharp jawline, leaned forward. "General, with all due respect, retaliating without understanding the full scope of their capabilities could lead to disaster. Diplomacy is dead," Marshall interrupted, his tone ice cold. "They've slaughtered civilians, destroyed infrastructure, and sent a clear message. They don't want peace. They want domination." At the edge of the room, Dr. Marcus Evans adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. Known for his brilliance and unorthodox methods, Evans was a polarizing figure. "If I may," he began, his voice measured, "we've managed to analyze some of the alien tech recovered from the New Haven assault. It's advanced, yes, but not infallible. With time, we can level the playing field." "Time is exactly what we don't have," Marshall replied sharply. He gestured to the holograms, which shifted to display the alien fleet's projected movements. "They'll hit the nearby colonies within days. We need a decisive response, now." A tense silence followed. Finally, one of the senior council members, a grizzled admiral with a deep scar across his temple, nodded. "The general's right. If we wait, we lose our foothold in this sector. We authorize immediate retaliation. The room erupted into a flurry of activity as orders were issued and strategies finalized. Marshall exhaled quietly, his stoic demeanor masking the weight of the responsibility he bore. He turned to Evans, who was already scribbling equations on a datapad. "Doctor, I need you to prioritize weaponizing that alien tech. Can you do it?" Evans looked up, his eyes gleaming with a mix of excitement and determination. "It won't be pretty, but I can make it deadly." "Good," Marshall said. "We'll need every advantage we can get." As the council dispersed, Marshall headed to the command center, where preparations for the counteroffensive were underway. The atmosphere was electric, charged with both urgency and fear. Soldiers moved with precision, their faces set with grim resolve. Among them was Captain Alex Harding, recently arrived from New Haven. His battered armor and haunted expression spoke volumes about the horrors he'd witnessed. "Captain Harding," Marshall greeted, extending a hand. "I've read your report. You did well under impossible circumstances." "Thank you, sir," Harding replied, his voice steady despite the exhaustion that clung to him. "But surviving isn't enough. We need to hit them where it hurts." Marshall nodded. "And we will. You'll be leading a strike force into alien space. High risk, high reward. Think you're up for it?" Harding's expression hardened. "Always." Nearby, Liam Cook stood awkwardly, clutching a datapad. He was out of place among the battle-hardened soldiers, his youthful face marked by fresh scars. Yet there was a quiet determination in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Marshall noticed him and raised an eyebrow. "And who's this?" "Liam Cook," Harding answered. "Technician from New Haven. He cracked the alien comms during the attack. Without him, we'd be in the dark." Marshall regarded Cook for a moment, then nodded. "Good work, son. We'll need minds like yours in the days ahead." Cook swallowed hard, a mix of pride and apprehension washing over him. "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." As the hours passed, the fleet's preparations moved into high gear. Massive warships were loaded with supplies, their sleek forms bristling with weaponry. Soldiers drilled relentlessly, their movements precise and disciplined. Harding oversaw the training, his sharp commands cutting through the din. Cook, meanwhile, worked alongside Evans in the research lab, helping to adapt alien technology for human use. Despite the frenetic pace, moments of quiet reflection emerged. Harding found himself in the mess hall late one night, staring at a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. Cook hesitated before sitting across from him. "You think we've got a chance?" Cook asked, his voice low. Harding glanced up, his eyes shadowed but roar. "We have to. If we don't fight back, they'll wipe us out." Cook nodded, his fingers tracing the edge of the cup in front of him. I never thought I'd be here, you know, fighting a war. None of us did," Harding said. "But here we are. All we can do now is make sure we're ready." Meanwhile, in the lab, Evans worked late into the night, his mind racing with ideas. The alien technology was unlike anything he'd ever seen, elegant yet brutal in its design. He pushed himself to the brink, driven by the knowledge that failure was not an option. By the time the fleet was ready to depart, a palpable sense of purpose had taken hold. Marshall stood on the command deck of the flagship Roar, addressing the assembled soldiers via hologram. "Today, we take the fight to them," he said, his voice ringing with authority. "They thought they could crush us, break our spirit. They were wrong. Humanity does not bow. We rise, we endure, and we fight." The soldiers cheered, their voices echoing through the cavernous hangars. Harding stood among them, his heart heavy with the weight of what lay ahead, but steeled by the knowledge that their cause was just. Cook, watching from the lab's viewport, felt a flicker of hope despite his fear. As the fleet launched into the blackness of space, the Earth grew smaller behind them. Each man aboard knew the risks, understood the stakes. There was no guarantee of victory, but they carried with them the unshakable belief that humanity would prevail. In the silence of his private quarters, Marshall studied a holographic map of alien space. His jaw tightened as he marked potential targets, his mind already planning the next moves. He knew the road ahead would be brutal, but he also knew they had no choice but to walk it. Far ahead, the alien empire loomed, unaware of the storm that was coming. "Status report," Marshall said, his voice steady. Captain Alex Harding stepped forward, his demeanor calm despite the tension crackling in the air. "Stealth units are in position, sir. They've begun jamming alien communication relays. We have a small window before they detect us." Marshall nodded. "Good. Proceed with Phase 1. We need to catch them off guard." On board the smaller, cloaked ship Vanguard, Harding led a strike team composed of humanity's best. Liam Cook sat at a console, sweat glistening on his brow as he monitored encrypted signals. His technical prowess had earned him a place on this mission, but the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders. "We're approaching the first target," Harding said, his voice low but commanding. "Remember, speed and precision are our allies here. We don't engage unless absolutely necessary." Cook glanced at the readings on his screen, his fingers hovering over the controls. "I've located their comm relay, sir. Disabling it now." His hands moved swiftly, overriding alien security protocols with a mix of ingenuity and sheer determination. The relay went dark, and Harding allowed himself a brief nod of approval. The strike team advanced through the alien installation, their movements silent and deliberate. The alien structures were eerily organic, their walls pulsing faintly as if alive. The atmosphere was thick with tension, every shadow a potential threat. Harding led the way, his sharp eyes scanning for signs of ambush. When the first alien patrol appeared, the humans acted with ruthless efficiency. Suppressed gunfire cut through the air, and the team moved forward without missing a beat. Cook hesitated only once, his breath catching as an alien's glowing eyes locked onto him before Harding's shot brought it down. "Keep moving," Harding urged, his voice a lifeline in the chaos. As they reached the control center, Cook worked furiously to extract data from the alien systems. His heart raced as lines of alien code filled his screen, their complexity unlike anything he had ever encountered. "I've got it," he finally said, his voice tight. "Their fleet movements, supply lines, everything good. Let's move," Harding ordered, gesturing for the team to retreat. The mission was a success, but their escape was far from guaranteed. Alarms blared as alien reinforcements descended upon the installation. The strike team fought their way back to the extraction point, their weapons blazing in the dim, flickering light. Cook clung to the stolen data, his resolve hardening with every step. When they finally returned to the Vanguard, the ship's engines roared to life, propelling them back to the safety of the human fleet. Cook sank into his chair, his chest heaving as the adrenaline ebbed. Harding placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "You did good, kid." Back on the Roar, Marshall analyzed the data Cook had retrieved. The alien fleet's movements were revealed in stark detail, their vulnerabilities laid bare. He wasted no time issuing orders, his voice sharp and decisive. "Commence Phase 2. Hit them hard and fast. We take out their supply depots and cripple their ability to fight." The human fleet surged forward, each ship a testament to humanity's resilience and ingenuity. Coordinated strikes devastated alien infrastructure, cutting off vital resources and plunging their forces into disarray. Every victory came at a cost, but the humans pressed on, their determination unshaken. In the thick of the fighting, Harding's tactical brilliance shone. He led his forces with precision, exploiting every weakness and adapting to the aliens' countermeasures. His men followed him without question, their trust in his leadership unshakable. Cook, now stationed aboard the Roar, found himself thrust into the heart of the conflict. He worked tirelessly alongside Dr. Marcus Evans, integrating alien technology into human systems. Their efforts bore fruit in the form of advanced weapons and shields, turning the tide in humanity's favor. But the aliens were far from defeated. Desperation drove them to unleash their most devastating weapon, a planet-destroying superweapon capable of erasing entire colonies in an instant. The revelation sent shockwaves through the fleet, and Marshall called an emergency meeting in the command center. "This changes everything," Marshall said, his voice grim. "If they deploy this weapon, it could wipe us out in one stroke." "We have to strike first," Harding said firmly. "We know where they're building it. If we can destroy it before it's operational, we can end this." "It won't be easy," Evans cautioned. "Their defenses around the facility will be impenetrable." "Nothing is impenetrable," Harding countered. "We've come this far. We can't stop now." The plan was set. The fleet would launch a full-scale assault on the alien superweapon, drawing their forces away while a smaller team infiltrated the facility to sabotage it from within. Harding volunteered to lead the infiltration, and Cook insisted on joining him despite the danger. As the fleet engaged the alien forces in a ferocious battle, Harding's team descended onto the surface of the alien planet. The air was thick with tension as they moved through the labyrinthine facility, their every step a calculated risk. Cook's hands shook as he worked to disable the weapons controls, his mind racing against the clock. Outside, the battle raged on. The roar took heavy fire, but Marshall's unyielding command kept the fleet in formation. Evans worked frantically to repair damaged systems, his normally calm demeanor strained under the weight of the moment. Inside the facility, Harding and Cook reached the weapon's core. The massive structure pulsed with energy, its activation imminent. Cook's fingers flew over the controls, bypassing layers of alien security. Sweat dripped down his face as alarms blared around them. "I need more time," Cook shouted. "You've got 30 seconds," Harding replied, fending off approaching alien guards with ruthless precision. Finally, the weapon's core destabilized, its energy spiraling out of control. Harding grabbed Cook and hauled him toward the exit as the facility began to collapse. They barely escaped as a massive explosion ripped through the planet's surface, obliterating the superweapon in a blinding flash. Back aboard the Roar, the mood was triumphant but subdued. The fleet had suffered heavy losses, but the destruction of the superweapon marked a turning point in the war. Harding and Cook stood side by side on the command deck, their faces marked by exhaustion, but also by the faintest glimmer of hope. "We're not done yet," Marshall said, his voice roar. "But today, we showed them that humanity doesn't back down." As the fleet regrouped and prepared for the next phase of the war, a quiet determination settled over the men. They had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, ready to fight for their survival and for the future of humanity. The human fleet hovered in the shadow of the alien capital world, its shimmering atmosphere cloaking a sprawling fortress city bristling with defenses. The stars themselves seemed to recoil from the sight of the planet, as though aware of the violence about to unfold. On board the Roar, General Ethan Marshall stood at the helm, his jaw set as he surveyed the situation. This was humanity's moment, a do-or-die gambit that would either ensure their survival or seal their doom. "Final checks," Captain Harding, Marshall said, his voice calm but commanding. The tension in the room was palpable, each man aware that history was about to be written in blood and fire. Harding stood by his side, his battle-worn armor reflecting the dim glow of the tactical displays. "Strike teams are in position. Cook's leading the infiltration squad. They'll be inside the planetary shield generator within 10 minutes. Marshall nodded, his eyes narrowing as the holographic display showed alien fleets converging on their location. "Good. As soon as the shield drops, we hit them with everything we've got. No hesitation." Harding hesitated, then said, "This won't be easy. If Cook's team fails." "They won't," Marshall interrupted, his tone brooking no doubt. "Cook knows what's at stake. And so do you." Far below, Liam Cook moved through the labyrinthine corridors of the alien installation, his heart pounding like a war drum. His infiltration team moved in eerie silence, their black armor blending into the dim light of the alien architecture. The structure seemed alive, its walls pulsing faintly with energy. Cook pushed the unease aside, focusing on his objective. Failure wasn't an option. 10 meters to the control room, one of his men whispered. Cook nodded, signaling the team to halt. Ahead, alien guards patrolled, their insectoid forms casting long shadows in the flickering light. Cook inhaled deeply, steadying himself. His hands gripped his rifle tightly as he gestured to his team. They moved as one, silent and precise, their training evident in every step. Within seconds, the guards were dispatched, their bodies crumpling noiselessly to the ground. Inside the control room, Cook's fingers flew across the alien console, bypassing security protocols with a mix of ingenuity and sheer nerve. The alien language was still unfamiliar, but he had studied it obsessively in preparation for this moment. The shield generator's core was massive, a pulsating sphere of energy that seemed to vibrate with malevolence. "I need 3 minutes," Cook said, his voice tight. His team formed a defensive perimeter, their weapons trained on the entrances. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridors, and Cook's heart sank. They were out of time. "Contact!" one of the soldiers shouted as alien reinforcements flooded the room. The team opened fire, their weapons blazing in the confined space. Cook worked frantically, his mind racing as he navigated the alien system. Sweat dripped into his eyes, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. On the roar, Marshall watched the countdown with grim determination. Every second felt like an eternity. "Prepare the fleet for bombardment," he ordered. "As soon as that shield drops, we hit them hard." Harding stood beside him, his expression unreadable. If the shield doesn't drop, Marshall's gaze didn't waver. It will. Back in the control room, Cook's hands finally stilled. The alien console emitted a low hum as the shield generator powered down, its energy dissipating in a spectacular burst of light. Cook turned to his team, his face etched with exhaustion. "We're done here. Fall back." The team fought their way out, their movements coordinated and deliberate. Cook's focus never wavered, even as alien forces pressed in on all sides. When they finally reached the extraction point, Cook felt a surge of relief as the team was pulled aboard their transport. The mission had succeeded, but the cost was evident in the empty seats around him. Above the planet, the human fleet surged forward as the shield collapsed. Massive warships unleashed a torrent of firepower, their weapons tearing through the alien defenses. The alien fleet responded in kind, and the void of space became a chaotic battlefield, filled with explosions and streaks of energy. The roar took the lead, its advanced weaponry cutting a path through the enemy lines. Marshall directed the assault with ruthless precision, his commands sharp and decisive. "Target their command ships. We break their chain of command, and the rest will crumble." Harding led the ground assault, his forces landing in the heart of the alien capital. The city was a nightmare of towering spires and glowing alien structures, its streets crawling with enemy troops. Harding moved through the chaos with the determination of a man who had nothing left to lose. His soldiers followed without hesitation, their trust in him absolute. "Push forward," Harding shouted, his voice carrying over the din of battle. "We take the command center or we die trying." The fighting was brutal, every inch of ground contested fiercely. Harding's men fought with a ferocity born of desperation, their weapons cutting down wave after wave of alien soldiers. Harding himself was a force of nature, his rifle never missing its mark. In the skies above, the roar took a direct hit, its hull shuddering violently. Marshall gripped the console for support, his eyes narrowing as damage reports flooded in. "Evans, I need those shields back online now." Dr. Marcus Evans worked frantically in the engineering bay, his mind racing as he rerouted power to the failing systems. Sparks flew as another explosion rocked the ship, but Evans didn't falter. "Shields are back up," he shouted into the comms. "But it won't hold forever. It just needs to hold long enough," Marshall muttered. On the ground, Harding's forces breached the alien command center, their victory hard-fought and hard-won. Inside, Harding confronted the alien commander, a towering figure with glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through him. "You've lost," Harding said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion that gripped him. "Call off your forces, and this ends now." The alien commander regarded him with cold disdain. "You are a speck in the vastness of the galaxy. Nothing you do here will change that." Harding didn't hesitate. He fired, the shot striking the alien dead. The remaining alien forces faltered, their cohesion shattered without their leader. The tide of battle turned, and humanity claimed victory. As the dust settled, Harding stood among the ruins of the alien capital, his armor scorched and his body weary. Around him, his soldiers cheered, their voices carrying the weight of triumph and loss. Above, the human fleet regrouped, battered but victorious. On the Roar, Marshall leaned against the command console, his face lined with fatigue. "We did it," he said quietly. Evans appeared at his side, a rare smile breaking through his usual seriousness. "For now," Marshall nodded. He knew the war was far from over, but for the first time, humanity had struck back and proved that they were not prey to be hunted. They were survivors, fighters, and a force to be reckoned with. As the fleet began its journey back to Earth, Cook sat alone in the transport bay, the weight of the mission settling over him. He thought of the lives lost, the sacrifices made, and the resilience of the human spirit. In the face of overwhelming odds, they had stood firm, and they would continue to do so no matter what lay ahead.